From small details like hieroglyphs and studs of different characters, minifigure secrets you completely missed, and even stuff LEGO themselves got wrong. This is everything you missed in LEGO Star Wars. Starting off with some characters cleverly hiding in plain sight. This one is hidden so well that I could only find one real picture of it online. What you're looking at are the innards of the Millennium Falcon cockpit, but these pieces here look almost too perfect to be an accident. This is without a doubt a reference to none other than Lando Calrissian. You can find this Easter egg in the Ultimate Collector's Series Millennium Falcon to be exact, and considering Lando's history with the ship, it only makes sense to bake him into the build. This one is extremely hard to spot though, so let me show you one that's just as purposeful, but a whole lot easier to see. Not too long ago, LEGO added a brand new sub-theme to LEGO Star Wars called the Starship Collection, and the whole point of it was to make a smaller version of super famous LEGO Star Wars ships strictly for decoration. One of these ships is the Executor Super Star Destroyer, which if you know anything about Star Wars, you know that this is one of the biggest ships in the entire universe. Since this version is part of the Starship Collection sub-theme though, it was scaled down to size. If you paid attention during the intro, you would have noticed that the brick-built version of Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker were just made with studs. And you can actually find something really similar in this set. It has to be taken apart to see it, but these studs aren't here for no reason. They actually represent the super famous bounty hunter scene from The Empire Strikes Back. You know, the one where Vader specifically tells Boba Fett, no disintegrations.
No disintegrations.
This is one of the easiest and most fun ways to slip an Easter egg into a LEGO set. But let me show you that Darth Vader and Luke Skywalker one that I keep talking about. It's in this mini version of the Death Star 2 set, and even though it would fit perfectly into the Starship Collection, it actually isn't a part of it. It was technically made to celebrate May 4th in 2023, but who cares about that? Where are Vader and Luke? Well, if you open the panel 2 from the left of the super laser, that's where you can find these 4 studs. They're here to represent when they fought in the Emperor's throne room.
I will not fight you, Father.
And considering how much happened in there, I'd say this is a worthy cameo. But the stud cameos still aren't done. The Tantive 4 from 2024 has Leia, R2, and C-3PO on the inside to reference the scene where Leia gave R2 the message for Obi-Wan. But not every cameo in LEGO Star Wars has to be this discreet. Sometimes all you have to do is check the back of the set. This exact scenario played out in the Trash Compactor diorama set. This one pays homage to the scene where Han, Luke, Leia, and Chewie were almost crushed to death in a trash compactor on the Death Star. And the only reason they survived was because R2-D2 and C-3PO disabled it. These two droids are clearly the heroes of this scene. So when you flip the set around and see them on the back, you realize that everything is exactly where it should be. R2 is there messing with the controls, and 3PO is right there next to him, doing everything he can, even if that was just grieving the gang's deaths.
Listen to them, they're dying, R2. It's all my fault.
These two droids can be recognized just about anywhere you put them. So would you believe me if I told you they've been in not 1, but 2 LEGO Indiana Jones sets? We all know that the creator of Star Wars, George Lucas, also made the Indiana Jones movies. But how in the world could LEGO designers slip these two into 2 sets from a completely different movie? Well, Indiana Jones is known for stealing artifacts from very old places. And a lot of times there are hieroglyphs on the walls, just to show how old these places really are. Now, if you look at this picture of the Indiana Jones and the Lost Tomb set from 2008, you can very clearly see R2 and 3PO on the tile piece at the top of the set. Once you know it's there, it's literally impossible to miss. But the crossover doesn't end here. In the Raiders of the Lost Ark, you can find R2 and 3PO as hieroglyphs in the actual movie. Now, fast forward 42 years to when the Escape from the Lost Tomb set dropped, and you can find these guys in basically the exact same place in the LEGO set. Just like the last one, once you know it's there, it's impossible to miss. Okay, I've been talking a lot about cameos, so why don't we switch gears so I can show you some Easter eggs that are functional parts of a set. The first one is a super famous one in the R2-D2 set from 2021. Remember the scene in Return of the Jedi when Luke was about to walk into the Sarlacc pit, but then he used the diving board to fly into the air and R2 launched his lightsaber to him? Well, LEGO certainly remembers it, because look what they added to this set. Luke's lightsaber is literally sitting right there. R2 carrying his lightsaber was a huge part of this plan. plan, so it only makes sense that LEGO included it in the set, just like Lando with the Millennium Falcon. Who's another famous droid LEGO could do something like this with? Well, the answer is BB-8. LEGO released a set for this little guy back in 2017. But unlike R2, he doesn't really have some special scene where he has to hide something. So what could LEGO do for him? Well, a cool little trick he did was use a lighter to give a thumbs up. I mean, he did it so much, it was basically his catchphrase. So what choice did LEGO have other than to include that same lighter in the set? This lighter was literally a part of BB-8, so I don't think people would have been too happy if LEGO left it out, like what happened with the headless AT-ST set. I don't think they want anything like that happening ever again. Anyways, the next small detail actually isn't really that small, and it isn't really in a LEGO set. In fact, the item is only sold by itself, and it's a reference to one of the longest running jokes in Star Wars. When we first meet Luke on Tatooine, he sits down and has some blue milk with his aunt and uncle. Don't ask me why. I have no idea why they chose the color blue. This joke kept going for years, and still does to this day. But what made it even better was when they had Luke drink green milk in The Last Jedi. Not only is it a funny reference to the scene from A New Hope, but it also represents the change in his lightsaber color, from blue to green. But why am I telling you all this? Is it because there's a secret blue milk carton in every set with a Luke minifigure? Or is there some blue milk spilled on the floor in the back of the Landspeeder set? Nope. Not at all. LEGO actually gave away a blue milk Luke Skywalker minifigure to people who bought the deluxe version of LEGO Star Wars The Skywalker Saga. And to this day, I'm still beating myself up for not buying it. But yeah, if you've seen this minifigure around, now you know why it exists. You can find the answer to a bunch of tiny little secrets like this if you know where to look. But the best thing you can do is know about a language called Orabesh. It's the main language spoken in the Star Wars universe, and just like most languages, they have their own alphabet too. I'm sure you already know where I'm going with this, but there are a million Easter eggs you can find in LEGO Star Wars sets just by knowing this language even exists. I'll only show you a few, because neither of us want to be here for 5 hours. But the first one is in the Ultimate Collector Series Cantina set. You can find this sticker on a tile piece inside the bar, and clearly this is not the English language. When translated to Orabesh, it reads wanted. But why are R2 and 3PO on a wanted poster in the cantina? Well, considering how they left Mos Eisley, you know, with the Empire chasing after them, they probably got put on a wanted list after they escaped. Another set with some Orabeshian secrets is the Ewok Village set, one of which is actually extremely dark. But if you know anything about Ewoks, you know that they're not as cute and innocent as they look. I'll start with the tame one though. This word with a heart around it translates to Leia, and it's assumed that Han did this at one point or another. So he won't say it, but he'll carve it. Okay, tough guy.
I love you.
I know.
Now, the piece that's next to this one is where the dark stuff comes in. I'm just gonna come right out and say it. Ewoks not only kill stormtroopers, but they also eat them. That's why they have a million Imperial helmets lying around, and that's why they use them as drums. Now, looking at this piece, notice how there are a bunch of tally marks around the Scout Trooper helmet? Well, in case you haven't put it together, whoever lives in this tree is saying that they've killed however many Scout Troopers are tallied here. And that means that they probably ate them too. So unfortunately, these little guys are a lot more evil than they look. And even LEGO knows it. Not a lot of people know deep-cut facts like this, but want to know what they do know? The opening scene to A New Hope. You know, the one where it goes... Yeah, that one. Well, the designers of the Star Wars logo set knew they couldn't leave it without any Easter eggs. So if you remove the top panel of the S and T, you can find a micro version of the Tantive ship and the Star Destroyer that was chasing after it. We know from the movies that the Star Destroyer caught up to the Tantive and trapped it in some weird docking area under the ship. And this is the part where I give LEGO designers all the props in the world. Because in the Imperial Star Destroyer set from 2019, not only is this dock part of the build, but there's even a mini Tantive included in the set that can be attached to it. This is one of the best examples of an Easter egg being brought full circle. Besides my goat Jedi Bob, of course. I mean, it easily deserves to be in the LEGO Hall of Fame. As for the rest of the references and small details in this video, I'm going to be showing you some stuff you'd only know is there if you built the set yourself. Starting with this sticker of the shield generators on Hoth in the AT-AT set. The first time we saw an AT-AT was on Hoth in The Empire Strikes Back, and their main target on that planet were the shield generators, so they could completely annihilate the Rebels' base. So this sticker is actually a really nice touch. That isn't even the best part about this set though. It may not be a Star Wars reference, but it's still sick nonetheless. If you take off some panels on the back of the AT-AT, you'll find octane barrels just sitting there. This crossover is even more surprising than seeing R2 and 3PO in those Indiana Jones sets, but doesn't that just make it better? I know what you want to see though. You want to see more deep cuts like the Stormtrooper kill count before the video ends. I got you. Let me show you a few. In the Darth Vader's castle set, there's a very important piece of Sith technology stored at the bottom. It's sitting on top of a podium, like something Indy would steal, but he should know better than to touch this, because this is a Sith holocron. A holocron is basically an artifact that stores a bunch of information. So the only reason this one in particular is dangerous is because it's Darth Vader's. That's not all for this set though. In a different part of it, you can pull a hidden compartment out of the ground and find a red kyber crystal. They didn't even mention these things in the movies, so if you recognize the name, then you probably already know all about them. These last few references are going to be all about Mando. Remember how Grogu literally could not keep his hands off of the silver shift knob in the Razor Crest? He literally had it in his hands or in his sight at all times, and since it's part of the ship, you can find it clear as day in the cockpit. Unfortunately, LEGO didn't unretire their chrome paint for this piece, which would have been awesome, but that's without a doubt the same silver shift knob. Another obsession Grogu has are eggs. For some reason, he loves eating them, no matter who they belong to. He ate the ones in the Ice Spider's nest, and he also ate the ones that belonged to the Frog Lady. We know for sure that he wasn't supposed to touch the Frog Lady's eggs, since Mando scolded him right after he ate one.
No. That is not food.
Clearly, Grogu will eat anything, but so will Jar Jar Binks, and he actually revolutionized the way LEGO makes minifigures. In 1999, Jar Jar Binks became the first LEGO minifigure in history to have a custom sculpted head. Before him, every single minifigure for over 20 years used the same headpiece. But Jar Jar's weird head obviously couldn't fit the standard mold, so LEGO had to make a totally new one just for him. And that single decision unlocked the door to everything that came after. Custom molded heads for Yoda, Chewbacca, other Wookiees, aliens, droids, and every other theme. All of it traces back to Jar Jar, but he wasn't the only Phantom Menace character who changed LEGO forever. From 1978 to 1999, every male LEGO minifigure had the same hairpiece. But when Qui-Gon Jinn showed up in the 1999 Phantom Menace sets, LEGO designed a totally new hairpiece just for him. It was the first new male hair mold in 2 decades. And just like Jar Jar's head, that single piece opened the door to every new hairpiece that came after it. But here's something crazy. LEGO Star Wars almost never happened at all. In 1997 and 1998, LEGO's own leadership nearly killed the Star Wars deal before it even started. The company had a long-standing policy against war toys, and several executives were super against licensing something literally called Star Wars. They were specifically worried about German mothers because market research showed that they were really worried about violence in kids' toys. The team pitching the deal had to strategically reframe Star Wars as a fantasy battle between good and evil, instead of a space war story. But even with that framing, some execs still said no. It was so close to not happening that Kjeld Kirk Christensen himself had to personally greenlight it and push it through. The deal was finally signed in 1998 after 6 weeks of negotiations, and it was LEGO's first ever licensing agreement. And even after it got approved, the original 1998 licensing agreement between LEGO and Lucasfilm was only set to run until 2008 or 2009. When it got close to expiring, it wasn't guaranteed to continue. LEGO had to renegotiate, and they did, at first extending it to 2011, then 2016, then 2022. The license is now locked in through 2032, but for a while, LEGO Star Wars was scheduled to be a limited theme that would just stop. If the negotiations had fallen through in 2008, it would have just ended. But while the theme was still running in the mid-2000s, LEGO tried something that seems impossible now. In 2005, they made 5 special minifigures with built-in electronics: Anakin, Obi-Wan, Mace Windu, Luminara Unduli, and Darth Vader. You'd press their head down and the lightsaber they were holding would actually glow, but the trade-off was pretty brutal. The battery only lasted 3 hours in total, and the figures couldn't be disassembled at all, so the feature was quietly dropped after just 1 year. These minifigures were in a few different sets, and then LEGO never tried it again. But speaking of lightsabers, the hilts actually used to look way better. From 1999 to around 2005, every lightsaber hilt in LEGO Star Wars was shiny chrome silver, just like they are in the movies. But in 2005, they switched over to a medium stone gray for a few years, before eventually using a bunch of different types of colors. Today's sets mostly use a dull dark silver. The chrome version still shows up occasionally, but it's rare now. And the early chrome hilts are pretty valuable because of how much better they look. But the hilts aren't the only part of lightsabers that changed. From 1999 to 2011, every green lightsaber blade was transparent fluorescent green, which is a bright, slightly yellowish neon color. But in 2011, LEGO switched to transparent bright green, which is slightly darker and more saturated. And after that, they never went back. If you have lightsabers in both colors side by side, the difference is actually pretty noticeable. But most people who grew up with LEGO Star Wars have no idea this even happened because it was never announced anywhere. And speaking of quiet changes, Darth Vader's helmet actually got completely redesigned in 2015. From 1999 to 2014, Vader's helmet didn't change at all. Then in the Death Star Final Duel set, LEGO changed it to a two-piece design with a separate neck piece and helmet that's way more accurate to the movies. Most people who grew up with the old helmet didn't even notice when it changed. But the funny part is that the 2019 20th anniversary sets brought back the original helmet, which was the first time LEGO admitted that the change had even happened. But now, let me show you something that's really easy to miss if you don't own both versions of it. The original Phase 1 Clone Trooper helmets from 2002 to 2007 had a cut-out slit for the visor. There was a literal hole in the plastic, which meant you could see the black printed head underneath through the gap. In 2008, when the Clone Wars TV show sub-theme launched, LEGO redesigned the helmet, so the visor was fully printed on the piece with a proper face visible underneath it. This also made the clones feel more like actual people, since, you know, that's what they were. But the clones actually changed again in 2022, and it was surprisingly really meaningful. For most of LEGO Star Wars history, clone troopers had generic light-colored heads inside their helmets. But in 2020, with the 501st Legion Clone Troopers set, LEGO introduced a new headprint with Maori and Polynesian accurate skin tone to match actors Temuera Morrison and Daniel Logan, who played Jango and young Boba Fett. This was a really subtle but awesome change that most people just didn't catch when it happened. And that wasn't the only skin tone change either. For most of LEGO Star Wars history, realistic skin tone meant one color, light nougat, which was introduced in 2004. By 2020, it was still being used for 78% of all Star Wars skin tones. But in 2022, LEGO started using medium brown and medium tan across all licensed themes. Collectors only noticed when new figures started showing up with different looking skin. But now, let me talk about a feature that took forever to come to Star Wars: dual molded legs. The first Star Wars minifigure to get them was Han Solo in the Betrayal at Cloud City set in 2018, which is a really long time after LEGO Star Wars started. But LEGO designers actually had an explanation for it. Apparently, LEGO Star Wars minifigures in particular use a bunch of different types of plastic, so making dual molds for them is a lot more difficult than it is for other themes. They've slowly been rolling out to more characters since 2018, but there still aren't that many of them. But if you think this is bad, arm printing has existed in Star Wars for over 20 years and still isn't standard. The first Star Wars minifigure with printed arms was Boba Fett in the Cloud City set from 2003, and he's also the first minifigure with leg printing. That was over 20 years ago, but today, arm printing is still a premium feature that LEGO only adds where it really makes sense. In 2021, LEGO designers publicly confirmed this won't ever be universal because some printing machines physically can't do it, and they can't replace all of them at once. But in 2019, to mark 20 years of LEGO Star Wars, LEGO released 5 special sets, and they all came with a throwback minifigure with old school yellow skin. Luke Skywalker, Han Solo, Darth Vader with the original 1999 helmet, Princess Leia, and Lando Calrissian. These figures even used the original torso designs too, which is a really cool detail. It was the first time yellow-skinned Star Wars minifigures had shown up since 1999. But speaking of 1999, that's when the UCS theme started, and it was a lot different than it is now. The original UCS sets, like the TIE Interceptor and the X-Wing, had 0 minifigures. LEGO originally wanted UCS sets to be display models for adults, but they slowly realized that people didn't like this. By 2007, with the Ultimate Collector's Millennium Falcon, LEGO started including minifigures in UCS sets, and I think we can all agree that that was a really good decision. But that original UCS X-Wing has a weirdly funny secret. When designers needed a clear window for the cockpit, instead of making something new, they just repurposed the windscreen cover from a 4.5 volt battery box designed for LEGO train sets. It was basically a perfect fit. These days, we know that they did this to save money, since they didn't know how well the UCS theme would really do. But UCS wasn't the only alternate format LEGO tried. In 2009, they released the midi-scale Millennium Falcon, which was kind of stuck in the middle. It was a display set that was too small for minifigures, but too detailed to be a toy. It didn't do too well though, because after a Star Destroyer in 2010, there was nothing for over a decade. The format just vanished. But for the 25th anniversary in 2024, LEGO brought it back with 3 new midi-scale ships: the Millennium Falcon, the Tantive IV, and the Invisible Hand. LEGO abandoned this format for 14 years and then just decided to start making them again, like nothing happened. But this next format was so weird that it never came back. In 2002, LEGO released a TIE Fighter set in the mini-sub theme, and it only had 12 pieces. It came in a poly bag, cost almost nothing, and was originally a promo for the LEGO Club. LEGO officially confirmed it as the smallest Star Wars set ever made, but there was also a hidden trick. If you bought 4 specific sets in the mini sub theme, the extra parts from all 4 of them could be built into a mini TIE bomber that didn't appear in any instructions. But if you thought that format was weird, in 2007, LEGO released a motorized version of the AT-AT. This thing actually walked forward and backward because it came with a motor, and it also had a head that moved up and down. It was LEGO's most expensive Star Wars set that year, besides the UCS Millennium Falcon. But here's the catch. It was only available directly from LEGO's catalog and website, not in regular stores. It became so popular that it went on permanent back order after Christmas in 2009, and those sets wouldn't ship out until June of 2010. It retired in 2010, and now sells for around $500 sealed, and LEGO's never made another motorized AT-AT since then. And speaking of things LEGO only tried once, in 2000 they launched a full sub-theme of large-scale Star Wars Technic sets. There was a pit droid, a battle droid, and a destroyer droid in the first wave. Then it kept going in 2001 with C-3PO and a stormtrooper, and then it ended in 2002 with Darth Vader, R2-D2, Jango Fett, and a super battle droid. After this, they never made another set for this sub-theme. The format just vanished. It was eventually replaced by the Buildable Figures Construction sub-theme in 2015, which also flopped and got cancelled. So LEGO has tried twice to make large buildable Star Wars figures, and both times it didn't work. But now, let me tell you about something that's oddly specific. When LEGO released Kit Fisto in set 7661 back in 2007, his head tentacles couldn't be made out of plastic because they'd snap off. So LEGO had to improvise, and they decided to make him a rubber head instead. He was the first LEGO Star Wars minifigure with a non-plastic head, and only 2 others ever got the same treatment: Plo Koon and the Clone Wars animated version of Yoda. All 3 of them are from a short experimental window between 2007 and 2012, where LEGO was trying this out. But after 2012, they just stopped doing it. But the weirdest minifigure story in all of LEGO Star Wars is Jedi Bob's. In 2002, the Republic gunship set included an unnamed generic Jedi who didn't match any character from the movies, and for some reason, fans started calling him Jedi Bob. He appeared in exactly 1 set and was never seen again for 22 years. That name wasn't even officially acknowledged until the 2009 LEGO Star Wars Visual Dictionary, 7 years after the set had been released. But then, in 2024, LEGO finally brought him back and gave him his own starfighter, and he became the lead character of the Disney Plus series, LEGO Star Wars Rebuild the Galaxy. Even the voice actor, Bobby Moynihan, turned out to own a Jedi Bob figure before he was cast for the part. This is a big milestone for Jedi Bob. And speaking of milestone minifigures, in 2019, LEGO Star Wars passed 1,000 unique minifigures in total. The 1,000th minifig was Iden Versio, the protagonist of the Star Wars Battlefront 2 video game. She's a character most casual Star Wars fans wouldn't even recognize, and she's only ever been in the Inferno Squad Battle Pack set. The milestone was officially hit in 2019, which means Star Wars went from 0 to 1,000 unique minifigures in exactly 20 years. But the coolest Star Wars minifigure isn't Iden Versio. It's someone way more important. In 2009, LEGO's design team in Billund made a minifigure of George Lucas himself, and it was never sold anywhere publicly, and it wasn't even announced. Because of this, nobody has any idea how many of them were made, or what they're worth. However, one did sell at auction on a website called Prop Store, and it was sold from anywhere from $8,000 to $16,000. But Bricklink has no sales data because so few of them have sold. It's essentially the rarest non-chrome Star Wars minifigure ever made, and almost nobody has one. But as accurate as that minifigure is, LEGO's made plenty of mistakes that they definitely want people to forget, like the one in one of the first LEGO Star Wars sets ever made. Back in 1999, when the theme was brand new, LEGO released a TIE Fighter set. And if you look at it, you'll notice something wrong immediately. It's built with blue pieces. Now, the original TIE Fighter from the movies doesn't have any blue on it at all. They're supposed to be gray and black. So why did LEGO make this decision? Well, it's probably because of the limitations of blue screen technology back in the 1970s when the original trilogy was filmed. The blue screen compositing they used to put the TIE Fighters into space scenes would sometimes make them look blue because of how the special effects worked. So LEGO looked at the movie footage and thought, oh, TIE Fighters are supposed to be blue. And speaking of color problems in the early days, the 1999 TIE Fighter wasn't the only one with this problem. Basically, every LEGO Star Wars set released before 2005 had completely random color schemes. LEGO just used whatever colors they had in their inventory instead of trying to be accurate to the movies. TIE Bombers had the same problems as TIE Fighters. X-Wings were all over the place with different shades. It was complete chaos if you cared about accuracy. Back then, LEGO's philosophy was to just get Star Wars sets out there and capitalize on the license. It wasn't until around 2005 that LEGO started actually caring about making sets look how they're supposed to. But even after 2005, they still messed up pretty badly sometimes. And the Desert Skiff set is a perfect example. In Return of the Jedi, the skiff that Jabba's guards use is a sand brown color, but LEGO made it dark reddish brown instead, which is completely wrong. And here's the part that makes this even worse. They made this mistake twice. The first time was in the year 2000, which makes sense since that was still during the era of random colors. But then they made the exact same mistake again in 2012. By then, LEGO was completely obsessed with screen accuracy for Star Wars sets, and yet somehow they still made the Desert Skiff in the wrong color. But Kylo Ren's command shuttle from 2015 might be the worst one of them all. In The Force Awakens, it's completely black, but for some reason, LEGO made the set in gray and light gray. Obviously, by 2015, they cared about accuracy, so the fact that this set made it onto the shelves at all is pretty crazy. But the wrong color isn't even the only problem with it. The wings don't fold the right way either. In The Force Awakens, you can see how the wings are supposed to fold when the shuttle lands, but LEGO LEGO made them fold completely differently in the set. So now you have a set that's not only the wrong color, but also has the wrong mechanism for one of its main features. But now, let me show you a mistake that's actually kind of hilarious when you think about it. The X-Wing fighter set from 2006 was officially marketed as Wedge Antilles Red 2, but if you actually look at the markings on the ship itself, it has 3 red stripes on it. This means it's Red 3, which is Big's Darklighter's ship, not Wedge's. So right away, there's a difference between what LEGO is selling and what they actually made. But here's where it gets even funnier. The instruction manual also labels it as Red 3. The whole point of the set is that it can be changed between Red 5 and Red 2. Like, LEGO even had this in the description. But in the instructions, LEGO labels the pilots with what ship they're supposed to fly. Luke pilots Red 5 and Wedge pilots Red 2, except LEGO says he pilots Red 3, which is completely wrong. But this same set has another problem that shows LEGO wasn't really paying attention. The Princess Leia minifigure that comes with it has a New Hope hair combined with an Empire Strikes Back torso. She's literally wearing clothes and hair from 2 different movies at the same time, which makes no sense. But now, let's talk about one of the most embarrassing mistakes LEGO's ever made with a Star Wars set. When the UCS Republic gunship came out in 2021, the first print run had a catastrophic error on the packaging. The box and instruction booklet had the Imperial logo instead of the Republic logo. This is a $350 Ultimate Collector Series set, which is supposed to be the pinnacle of LEGO Star Wars quality and accuracy, and LEGO put the wrong symbol on it. LEGO eventually had to admit this was a genuine mistake, and they fixed it in their later print runs. But the fact that it made it through design, approval, printing, and shipping without anyone catching it is absolutely insane. And speaking of UCS sets that have serious problems, the Assault on Hoth set from 2016 completely failed to live up to what a UCS set is supposed to be. It was officially marketed as a UCS set, which means it should have the highest level of detail and accuracy that LEGO can make. But instead, it's filled with design flaws and inaccuracies throughout the entire build. Fans were expecting something amazing because of the UCS label and the high price point, and instead they got a set that feels more like a regular one that someone slapped a UCS sticker on after the fact. But at least the Assault on Hoth set tried to include everything, because the UCS Death Star from 2025 just straight up left stuff out. In A New Hope, Luke and Han disguised themselves as stormtroopers to sneak around the Death Star. Well, in this set, the Luke and Han minifigures don't have stormtrooper helmets. And here's what makes this super confusing. The last Death Star sets from 2008 and 2016 both have these helmets. So LEGO's made this set multiple times over the years, and they knew that including stormtrooper helmets for the disguise scene was an important detail, which is the most expensive and supposedly most accurate version they've ever made. They just decided not to include them. And another set with a similar problem is the Emperor Palpatine's shuttle set. The set shows the scene where Anakin is being turned into Darth Vader after being rescued from Mustafar. This is one of the most important moments in all of Star Wars, but LEGO kind of messed it up. In the set, Anakin already has his Darth Vader helmet on, but in the actual movie, he doesn't get the helmet until after the rest of the suit is already on him. This is super nitpicky for sure, but they never made this mistake in other Darth Vader transformation sets, so it kind of stuck out. But the Battle of Takodana set from 2016 has a main character missing from it, which is insane. The set shows the battle at Maz's castle from The Force Awakens, and it shows Finn and Kylo Ren fighting each other, but Rey is nowhere to be found. And here's the problem with that. She's not only present in this scene in the movie, but she's one of the main characters in this moment. The whole point of the scene is that Kylo Ren captures her in all the commotion, and yet she's just not in the set. But at least the Battle of Takodana set shows a scene that actually happens in the movie, even if it's missing someone important, because the Kashyyyk set from 2005 does the exact opposite, and just puts characters in places they never went before. The set shows Mace Windu on the beaches of Kashyyyk during their fight with the droids, but he was literally never here. Yoda is the one who goes to Kashyyyk to help the Wookiees. Mace is on Coruscant dealing with Palpatine, and yet here he is in this set. But now let's talk about something that's not technically wrong, but is definitely controversial with fans. In 2025, LEGO released a new version of Jango Fett's ship and named it the Firespray class Starship. Then they released another version called Jango Fett's Starship. Notice what's missing with both of these names? The ship's actual name, the Slave 1. Now, this change is obviously because the word slave could be inappropriate for a kid's toy, and I completely understand why LEGO made this decision. But the original 2002 LEGO set was just called Slave 1 on the box with no issues. So seeing it renamed in 2025 is definitely noticeable and sparked a lot of conversation. Moving on though, let me show you some production errors that happened during manufacturing, starting with one of the weirdest ones I've ever seen. During a certain production run, clone trooper heads were printed with a reddish tin instead of the normal skin tone. This made them look like they'd spent way too much time in the sun without sunscreen. So if you happen to buy a clone trooper set during that specific production run, your clones almost look sunburned. Some collectors actually think these misprinted versions are kind of cool because they're so weird, but at the time, people were not happy. Speaking of printing errors, one of the most common defects you'll see on Star Wars minifigures is helmet prints that aren't aligned properly. There are physical ridges molded into the helmet piece, so LEGO uses these to line up the print down to the millimeter. But sometimes the printing is off, and once you notice it, you can't unsee it. It's super common for pilot helmets for whatever reason, so you can find a lot of them online. Another printing error that happens sometimes is when an entire color layer is completely missing from a minifigure's design. Modern LEGO printing uses multiple passes to apply different colors for the final design, so they might print black first, then white, then red, and all three layers combine to make the complete image. But sometimes one of those passes just doesn't happen. We can't really know why, but for whatever reason, you end up with a minifigure that's missing an entire color from its design, which makes it look really weird. But the absolute rarest type of factory error is when pieces are molded in the complete wrong color of plastic. This happens when the injection molding machines get loaded with the wrong color, or when there's leftover plastic from a previous production run that contaminates the new batch. There's a famous example of this with a Deadpool minifigure that came out with a gray head instead of red. The head was supposed to be molded in red plastic to match Deadpool's mask, but somehow it got molded in gray instead. These errors are extremely rare because factories have quality control processes that catch this kind of thing. But when they do slip through, they're usually worth a lot of money to collectors because they're so rare. And speaking of color errors that made it through quality control, in 2017, LEGO had one of the most expensive mistakes in their entire history. There was a factory error where they shipped out light gray pieces instead of dark gray in multiple different sets. This affected both Star Wars and creator sets, so it wasn't just one theme that got hit. But because of how big Star Wars was in 2017, a ton of people got the wrong pieces. The color difference between light and dark gray is big enough that it completely throws off the look of any set. This mistake was so bad that it cost LEGO $1 million to fix it, because they had to manufacture replacement pieces and ship them out to everyone for free. It's one of the single most expensive errors LEGO has ever made, and LEGO Star Wars was one of the main themes that got hit with it. But now, let me talk about some things that aren't exactly mistakes, more like missed opportunities. One of the most obvious examples is that Leia's Bespin escape outfit has never been made as an official minifigure. This is the outfit she wears in The Empire Strikes Back, when she's escaping Cloud City with Lando and the others. It's one of her most iconic and recognizable outfits from the original trilogy. LEGO has made basically every other Leia outfit you can think of. The white dress from A New Hope, the Hoth outfit, the Endor outfit, even some of the weirder ones from the newer movies. But for some reason, they've never made the Bespin escape outfit into a minifigure. But another completely obvious missing thing are official Force Ghost minifigures. In the Star Wars movies, when Jedi die, they can appear as blue transparent Force Ghosts. We see this with Obi-Wan, Yoda, Anakin, and even Qui-Gon in the Clone Wars. And fans have been asking LEGO to make Force Ghost minifigs for decades. Obviously, they've never done it, since we still don't have any today. But I feel like if they can make minifigs like Orion, they can easily make Force Ghosts. But now, let me tell you about a huge mistake that LEGO Lego barely avoided. When Revenge of the Sith was being filmed, the original script had a scene where Emperor Palpatine used Anakin's blue lightsaber during a fight. Lego was designing sets based on early information from the movie, and they were super close to including this detail in one of their sets. Other toy companies like Hasbro actually made the mistake and released toys with it, so Lego barely escaped. They almost made a Palpatine minifigure with a blue lightsaber. Luckily, they were able to change this before production, because obviously Palpatine never used a blue lightsaber in the prequels. Imagine if this actually happened though. No one would ever let them forget it. It's not all bad though. Most of the Star Wars minifigures are super accurate, and some of them are even hiding references to different things, like Luke and Han dressed up as stormtroopers. If you've seen A New Hope, you know exactly what scene this is from. Luke and Han need to rescue Princess Leia from the Death Star detention block, so they knock out 2 stormtroopers and steal their armor. It's one of the most iconic scenes in the entire original trilogy, and it's been recreated in multiple Lego sets. The UCS Death Star from 2025 comes with both Luke and Han in stormtrooper disguises. But it's not just that set. The 2016 Death Star had them too, and even the original 2008 Death Star had these minifigures. Lego has made this scene so many times because it's just that memorable. I mean, the whole "aren't you a little short for a stormtrooper" line is one of the most quoted moments in Star Wars history.
Short for a stormtrooper.
So of course Lego keeps bringing it back. But speaking of stormtroopers, the 2025 UCS Death Star also has one of the funniest minifigures in the entire theme, the Hot Tub Stormtrooper. Now, if you've never played the Lego Star Wars video games, you might be confused by this. But in Lego Star Wars 2, the original trilogy, Lego Star Wars The Complete Saga, and Lego Star Wars The Skywalker Saga, there's this running gag where you can find stormtroopers just chilling in hot tubs around the Death Star. It's completely random and has nothing to do with the actual movies, but it became such a beloved Easter egg that Lego decided to make it a real minifigure. So in the 2025 Death Star set, there's literally a stormtrooper relaxing in a hot tub, which is super funny. But let's move on to another iconic moment from the original trilogy: Han Solo frozen in carbonite. In The Empire Strikes Back, Darth Vader captures Han in Cloud City and uses him as a test subject for the carbon freezing chamber. The whole scene is super intense because nobody knows if Han will actually survive, and it ends with him getting frozen and handed over to Boba Fett. It's one of the most dramatic moments in the entire original trilogy, and Lego has recreated it multiple times. The carbon freezing chamber set comes with a Han and carbonite piece, and so does the massive Betrayal at Cloud City set. But here's what's interesting. The Han and carbonite piece isn't even technically a minifigure. It's a printed tile that looks like Han frozen in carbonite. Lego's used this piece in so many sets over the years that it's become one of the most recognizable elements in the Star Wars theme. But Han getting frozen isn't the only iconic moment from Cloud City. There's also the legendary duel between Luke and Darth Vader, which is where the "I am your father" reveal happens.
I am your father.
This is arguably the most famous plot twist in movie history, and Lego has made multiple sets based on this scene. The Bespin duel set is specifically designed to recreate this moment, and it comes with Luke in his Bespin outfit and Darth Vader. The set even has a weather vane that Luke can hang from after Vader cuts off his hand. But the bigger version of this scene is in the Betrayal at Cloud City set, which has the entire carbon freezing chamber and the duel location, so you can recreate both iconic moments in one massive set. Anyways, let's talk about another iconic moment from The Empire Strikes Back: Luke training with Yoda on Dagobah. This is where Yoda teaches Luke about the Force, and it's where we get the legendary
Do or do not. There is no try.
The Dagobah Jedi training diorama set is specifically designed to recreate this moment, and it comes with Luke in his Dagobah training outfit and Yoda with his walking stick. The set has the swamp environment, Yoda's hut, and even the X-Wing sinking into the water. It's one of the most detailed diorama sets Lego's made for Star Wars, and it perfectly captures the feel of that training sequence. But now let's jump to Revenge of the Sith, because there's a minifigure that captures one of the most emotional moments in the entire trilogy, when Anakin officially becomes Darth Vader. At the end of Revenge of the Sith, Anakin and Obi-Wan have their fight on Mustafar, and after Obi-Wan wins, Anakin is left in pretty bad shape, but the worst for him is yet to come. He finds out that he killed Padme in his rage.
It seems in your anger, you killed her.
which is exactly what Palpatine wanted. He's never been more vulnerable, so Palpatine takes the chance to make him a fully fledged Sith Lord, and puts him in the suit, masking him as Darth Vader. It's the most memorable scene in the prequels by far, and the Emperor Palpatine's shuttle set comes with an Anakin minifigure from right after the fight. Inside the ship, you can put Darth Vader's helmet on him, recreating the scene, which is super sick. But there are also minifigures recreating the fight itself. Obviously, one of the best moments from the fight is the "You were the chosen one" scene.
You were the chosen one!
Because it's one of the most tragic moments in the entire saga. The duel on Mustafar set recreates a small part of this battle, and it comes with Anakin and Obi-Wan in their Mustafar outfits. It isn't very big, so it's not like you can reenact the entire fight, but it's a good set for displaying. Obviously, Anakin was never the same after this fight. And in The Empire Strikes Back, there's a brief scene where you can see him in a Bacta tank getting medical treatment. It's easy to miss because it happens so fast, but it's one of the only times in the original movies where you see Vader vulnerable and injured. And the Vader's castle set comes with a Vader minifigure that's specifically designed for the Bacta tank. If you only casually watch the movies, this one might go right over your head. But let's jump to Return of the Jedi, so we can talk about Emperor Palpatine in the throne room. The Emperor's throne room diorama set recreates the final confrontation between Luke, Vader, and Palpatine, and it comes with a Palpatine minifigure that has lightning hands. This is referencing the moment when Darth Vader finally breaks free from Palpatine and throws him over the edge inside the Death Star. Another iconic moment with Palpatine is when Mace Windu and the other Jedi try to arrest him when he was still the Chancellor. This is the scene where Palpatine reveals himself as Darth Sidious and says the legendary line,
"I am the Senate."
It's one of the most memed moments from the prequels, and LEGO has included versions of this scene in various Coruscant sets over the years. The minifigures show Palpatine in his Chancellor robes before he transforms into the Emperor, and it's such a pivotal moment in the story. Oh, and of course, it's also where he says his famous line, "Unlimited power." But let's go all the way back to the beginning, to the Phantom Menace, because there's a small minifigure detail in there that's easy to miss. The duel on Naboo set comes with Qui-Gon Jinn, Darth Maul, and Obi-Wan, and it's recreating their fight in the Naboo generator. This is where Darth Maul kills Qui-Gon, and it's one of the most shocking moments in the Phantom Menace. But here's the thing, the Qui-Gon minifigure has two different faceplates, and one of them is very reminiscent of his face when he dies. It's not explicitly labeled as his death face, but if you look at it, it has this pained, exhausted expression that looks exactly like Qui-Gon in his final moments. We all remember what happens next. Obi-Wan cuts Darth Maul in half, and he falls down a shaft, and everyone assumes he's dead. But in the Clone Wars, it's revealed that Maul survived and got cybernetic spider legs to replace his missing lower half. The Mandalorian speeder set comes with a Darth Maul minifigure that has these mechanical legs, and it's such a specific reference to the Clone Wars. Like, if you only watched the movies, you'd have no idea why Maul is still alive or why he has robot legs. But if you watch the show, you know this is one of the most important plot points in all of Star Wars. But now, let's talk about Padme in the Geonosis arena from Attack of the Clones. This is the scene where Padme, Anakin, and Obi-Wan are chained up and about to be executed by giant monsters, and it leads to a massive battle. LEGO has made multiple Geonosis arena sets over the years, and they all come with Padme in her Tauren white outfit from that scene. It's one of the most iconic looks for Padme, and it's instantly recognizable to anyone who's seen Attack of the Clones. Another key moment from Attack of the Clones is when Obi-Wan investigates the clone army on Kamino. This is where he discovers that someone ordered a massive army of clones without the Jedi knowing about it, and it leads to his fight with Jango Fett. LEGO included Obi-Wan in his Kamino outfit in loads of Jedi Starfighter sets over the years, and it's referencing this specific investigation. Another Clone Wars character that's gotten multiple minifigures is Captain Rex. He's one of the most beloved characters from the show, and he's a clone trooper who fights alongside Anakin and Ahsoka throughout the Clone Wars. The minifigure that's most iconic is Rex in his Phase 2 armor, which he wears during the later seasons of the show. This is also the version of Rex who resists Order 66 and removes his inhibitor chip so he doesn't turn on the Jedi like all of the other clones. He's one of the few clones who stays loyal to his Jedi friends, and he becomes a huge part of the rebellion later on. Speaking of the rebellion, let's jump to A New Hope, because there's a really specific specific minifigure that most people forget about. In the 2011 Millennium Falcon set, there's a Luke minifigure wearing a blast shield helmet. This is the training scene on the Millennium Falcon, where Obi-Wan teaches Luke to use the Force by having him deflect blaster shots from a training remote while wearing the helmet. It's a quick scene in the movie, but it's an important moment because it's the first time Luke actually starts to understand the Force. One of the most important minifigures from that era is unmasked Kylo Ren. In The Force Awakens and The Last Jedi, there are several scenes where Kylo takes off his helmet and reveals his face as Ben Solo. These moments are crucial because they show his internal conflict. He's trying to be like Darth Vader, but he's struggling with the light side of the Force. The unmasked Kylo Ren minifigure appears in sets like the Battle on Takodana set and the Snoke's Throne Room set, and it shows his face with the scar that Rey gave him. It's a very specific look that captures his character arc throughout the sequels. But one thing I haven't really touched on yet is the Mandalorian, and there's a minifigure that just came out and it's already become iconic. Grogu in his hover pram. Set 75403 is literally just Grogu sitting in his hover pram, but it also comes with a little minifigure version. In the show, Grogu rides around in this thing because he's too small and tired to walk everywhere, and it became one of the most recognizable things from The Mandalorian. The Lego version is built to scale and has all the details from the show, like the closed canopy and the hovering mechanism. It's such a simple set, but it perfectly captures one of the cutest moments from modern Star Wars. But now, let's talk about one of the most controversial minifigures in Lego Star Wars, Darth Jar Jar. For years, there was a huge fan theory that Jar Jar Binks was actually a secret Sith Lord who was manipulating everyone in the prequels. The theory got so big that it became a giant meme on the internet, and eventually Star Wars themselves leaned into it. In the Dark Falcon set, which is an alternate universe version of the Millennium Falcon, there's a Darth Jar Jar minifigure. He's wearing Sith robes and has a red lightsaber, and it's Lego's way of acknowledging the fan theory. It's such a ridiculous and fun reference that you can't help but love it. But this next minifigure is one of the weirdest ones in this whole video. Now, obviously, Lego's made special minifigures for the Star Wars Advent calendars before, and most of the time they aren't canon. Like, when have you ever seen Darth Vader in a Christmas sweater? But this C-3PO is actually canon. In The Rise of Skywalker, Babu Frick was accessing his memory and needed him to translate something in a Sith language. However, C-3PO was programmed to not be able to do this, so to make it happen, Babu put him in a restricted mode which turned his eyes red. So even though this wasn't as cool as C-3PO turns to the dark side, the minifigure is definitely still referencing something very canon to the story. But how much of this stuff did you already know? Be sure to let me know down in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe.